Okay, welcome to another episode of my podcast on the future of business and technology. Today's topic is robots, AI, and the future of surgery. Robots and AI are transforming industries everywhere, but few areas show the potential more clearly than the operating theater, where the future of surgery is being rewritten before our eyes. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Mark Slack, co-founder and chief medical officer of CMR Surgical. Mark is a world-leading surgeon, researcher, and one of the minds behind Versius, a next-generation surgical robot transforming keyhole surgery worldwide. Under his leadership, CMR has grown into a 4 billion medtech company, with robots now being used in tens of thousands of procedures across more than 30 countries. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Bernard. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, the first time we met was at a lunch at Soho Farmhouse, and I thought after our conversation that was so fascinating, I wanted to record it straight away. So we agreed to come onto this podcast, which is lovely.
No, it's a pleasure, and it was lovely meeting you that day at Founders Forum. I thought it was, I'd been reluctant to go, but thoroughly enjoyed it, and meeting you was great, and we had a great conversation.
Yeah, I agree. So you were once a high-level athlete and now a co-founder and CMO of one of the most innovative surgical robotics companies. I would love to know about your personal journey and how you ended up where you are today.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the athlete. When I was at school, the only thing I wanted to do was run around a track faster than anybody else. And my report cards reflected it as well. In fact, I had a scholarship to go to Ohio State University in America to run. And my father persuaded me to take my place at medical school. I got into medicine then, and I wrote to the medical school and said, could I go to America for 2 years to run and then still keep my place? And they said, you can reapply. It was so difficult to get into medical school that my father persuaded. It was a good thing because soon after I started injuring, and that put an end to my athletic career. So I trained in Johannesburg in South Africa at the University of the Witwatersrand and did a standard medical training. And afterwards, we had to do national service in South Africa. I was now a qualified doctor, and I spent some of that time as a non-combatant medical officer in Angola. So learned a lot there about oneself, and you saw how destructive the world can be to itself. And then when I was not in the field, they used to put me in the military hospital when I was on rest and relief, and they put me in the gynecology department. I had no choice, and there I met an inspirational civilian consultant who sort of pushed me into trying the exam, and that's how I got into gynecology. So I then trained in Cape Town as a gynecologist, and got to consultant level, and then came to England to do some research, and I just forgot to go home. So I came to Cambridge, and it's a lovely environment. There's so much going on here. It's a bed of research. I used to do lots. I ran a research department, and I ended up as head of gynecology at Cambridge University. But along that path, I did lots of other inventing. So I introduced an operation to the United Kingdom when I was still a trainee, which is now the most commonly performed operation for prolapse in the world. And then I invented a test for people who are about to undergo incontinence surgery, which I co-developed at Johnson & Johnson. And there's an interesting story about that as well. And then I developed another product with Johnson & Johnson. And so I've always had this interest in academia with an overlap into technology and in business as well.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. And how did you end up getting involved with the robotics world?
So I ran a minimal access or keyhole surgery program for many, many years, and the trainees would spend 2 years with me. And I realized that some of them just could not do minimum access or keyhole surgery well. And when I then looked at the figures in the world, only about 40% of people in a country like the United States actually get keyhole surgery, and a very large number still get open surgery. And I came to realize that keyhole surgery is difficult to do, and some people can't do it. And so I wondered whether, there are many things. If you move your hand to the right in keyhole, the instrument goes to the left. It's two-dimensional picture. It's technically very, very difficult to do. So I wondered whether robotics would make that easier. And I went and looked. There was only one robot available on the market, and which I personally didn't like. I then did a survey of surgeons to say, if there's a robot available, why have you not moved to use that robot? And their feeling was that it was too big. They had to change the ports. They had to change the way they did the operation. So I started to think about maybe we develop a robot. Now, that if I knew then what I know now, Bernard, I wouldn't have started. It is so much work, but Cambridge being what it is and tech what it is, that's when Luke and I met. Luke is a brilliant engineer, or he's a physicist actually. And I said to him what I wanted was a robot that was modular, small, easy to be moved around, and would be able to replicate the way we do keyhole surgery. And he said he thought he could do that. I thought he was mad, but he could do it. And that's where the journey to start CMR started, with literally a computer-generated image.
Incredible. Yeah, I love the whole environment in Cambridge nowadays. I will always have a sweet spot for Cambridge because I went to university there and loved it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful environment now. In 2014, when we started, so many of the parts we needed in robotics we had to make ourselves. Stuff that's now commercially available off the shelf. So, and we needed, people with PhDs, we needed physicists, we needed engineers, we needed software designers, we needed ordinary data people. Not many cities will you find all that expertise sort of at your fingertips. And so it's a very ambitious program. There were 5 of us that started, me and Luke, and a chap called Martin Frost, Keith Marshall, and Paul Roberts. And we all get on terribly well now. That wasn't always the case. In the first year or two, Paul and I used to fight quite a lot. And we subsequently learned we have identical personalities. It's a bit like fighting with yourself. But I think in many ways it was one of those Beatles moments where we all brought different skills to the party, but we respected each other. And so, I don't think any single founder can claim to be the main person in it. In the beginning, we all contributed a lot to it. And then people go in their own different directions. And of the 5, there's just me and Luke left in the company now.
So when you started in medicine, robotic surgery was barely on the radar.
Correct.
How have surgical robots evolved from the first prototype to today's state-of-the-art systems? And what's the business case for surgical robots?
So the big difference is the majority of robots on the market. I mean, there are a lot now. There are about 60. But the Da Vinci was the first one. It got its licensing in about 2001. And it is a very successful company with a very successful robot. The difference is that it holds its instruments like a dagger, sort of in a fist. And it has what we call a remote sensor motion. And so that doesn't give it quite the same reach. And in order to overcome the reach problems, it has to be big. So it's very tall, weighs 660 kilograms. And so it largely has to only be in one theater. Ours holds the instruments completely differently. It holds them end on, like a human would hold an instrument. So that gives us rotation, flexion, yaw, all one movement. And so the robot could be much smaller. So ours has a footprint of 38 by 38 centimeters each one. We have a console where the surgeon drives it. And then we have 4 arms. One holds the camera, and 3-hole instruments. And you can put 2 in, 3 in, or 4 in, according to the operation you're doing. The thing that I love about ours is I can copy the places where you put the instruments in, identical to laparoscopic surgery. And we can follow the same procedures, identical. And so for a laparoscopic or keyhole surgeon to convert to ours is very quick. And ours is quite unique. We're the only robot on the market that is got this form factor. And as a result of the smallness, when we're not using it, we can just put it against the wall. And the theater can still be used for anything else. We can also move it from one theater to another theater. So it doesn't just have to occupy one place. And I think what's going to happen, Bernard, is that so in the beginning, if you'd said to me, was a robot better than a good keyhole surgeon? I would have said no. What the robot would do is enable more people to do keyhole surgery. So if I wanted to teach you to tie a knot with normal keyhole surgery, that's about 50 hours of practice. Wow. In the robot, it's about half an hour to an hour. So in one of our studies, there was a surgeon there who had started doing keyhole surgery many, many years ago and had failed and given up and gone back to open surgery. And when we came to his hospital with our robot, he said, actually, he likes to look at the robot. Can he practice as well? So we trained him and he participated in the study. Such was, so a person who previously couldn't do keyhole surgery is now totally able to do it because the robot. And the things are just obvious, is that if I move my hand right, the instrument on the screen goes right. Mm-hmm. If I move it left, it maps. It's also got 3-dimensional vision, so you actually can see much more easily, and it just makes keyhole surgery much, much easier and able to be done by more people. So a good keyhole surgery surgeon will, easily match what somebody does in the robot. But the more average ones will be given a step up, and they'll do it better. So that's really the aim. Having said that, we are now starting to see areas where the robot is superior. And one of the areas is we've just finished our first pediatric surgical study. And the surgeon in charge of the study said that he no longer feels he can go back to doing handheld keyhole surgery because it would be unethical, because the robot is so much better in the small. And we started pediatrics in a 15-year-old child, and we've just recently done a 5-month child.
Wow.
And our guys are confident they can operate down to about a 3-kilogram child. And it just makes suturing and manipulation so much better. And that paper is being prepared for publication now. And we don't have regulatory approval for pediatric surgery, but we're actually in the process of applying for that. Other areas where it also shows real advantages, like the chest. It's a smaller space. It makes keyhole surgery more difficult, and the robot enables it. So it's a very interesting space. When I qualified, there was not a single robot on the market. 2001, one came. Now there's robots all over the show.
So looking ahead then, what role do you see AI playing in surgical robotics? And could we move from robotic assistance, which is what we have today, to AI-driven autonomous surgery?
Really interesting question. So, yeah, in many ways, I always joke and I say, imagine if you had an AI app or program that could reduce your complications by 47% and your deaths by 37%. How much would you pay for that? And the joke is we do have something that reduces. If the surgeons do the WHO surgical checklist, which is asking a set of questions to the patient, that's how much they reduce complications. So one of the things we're going to do there, we're going to probably put it on a program on the robot. So they have to do the checklist before they can start. Bernard, AI, I mean, I can be cynical about it, but my goodness, what a difference it's going to start making. So if you'd asked me 2 years ago, do I think there could be autonomous surgery? My answer would be no. I don't say that anymore. So there are many aspects. So one of the areas where it could, so my robot with a 99.9% accuracy can tell the difference between an expert and a novice based on the movements of their hands and the movement of the instruments, which we capture on telemetry. So I could see a future where somebody's come for their annual appraisal. They will sit in the robot, they'll have to do a set of exercises, and the robot will say, exercise number 6, you didn't do very well. You maybe need some more practice, So that's one. Other area I can see in the very near future is when you get to a certain part of the robot, the operation would say, at this stage of the operation, so many percent of surgeons have the following problem. Or if you want to activate the energy and you can't see the instrument, it would say, your instrument is out of view, do not activate. So those are early steps, but my goodness, the speed with which AI is changing that, there's already somebody's done on a cadaver, but a cholecystectomy from beginning to end completely with AI. Now, the challenge is coping with the breathing. If I take a deep breath in and out, the bowel doesn't move in a consistent way. It moves randomly. And so there will be challenges, but it would be a very foolish person to say no AI. We use data very strongly. So I have a registry of all the outcomes in thousands of patients. So we have the telemetry of the movement of the things, we have the video of the operation, and we have the clinical outcomes. Now, when you start getting 200,000 cases like that, then the analysis may show us all sorts of insights into it. So data that would otherwise be lost in surgery is suddenly captured because we have an interface between the surgeon and the patient. So yes, it's going to transform surgery. I also believe that people won't do handheld keyhole surgery anymore in the near future. It will all be robotics. I sponsored the Association of Surgeons in Training, and we surveyed them and said, what did they anticipate they would be doing their career? 99% said they believed they'd be operating on robots. And I think robots will be assisting, where you may come to a point, say suturing, tying knots is difficult. You could get to a point and press a button and it ties the knot for you efficiently, quickly. The other amazing thing, Bernard, is when I come out of, if I'm doing a robotic surgery, at the end of a day, you feel fresh because you're not, when you're doing keyhole, you're standing on one leg, your arm is in the air. It's exhausting. And a lot of surgeons get injuries from sore arms and so on. And of course, the robot, you're sitting neutrally. You can stand as well if you want. And we have lots of other changes. A lot of the robots, they have to look into like a periscope console, whereas ours is open. We look at a screen, and that's not by chance. We surveyed the staff, and the surgeons were 50-50, open or closed. 100% of the anesthetists, 100% of the nurses said we prefer open because we can communicate clearly with the surgeon. So there's just so many areas where professional education, we've really made an art of that. We have, and that will be another area where AI will help. We already have proficiency based. So you can't just go and sit in there for 2 hours. You have to pass stages. And I see the machine marking that in the not too distant future. If we want to solve the problem in the world, which is a shortage of surgeons, this is the way we have to look at it. And more recently, the people that have really been visiting us with an interest are the military. They are very, very interested in creating a robot that can go into the front line almost. And that's in fact where robots started. That is what the first Da Vinci was built for, but it's a bit large for the front line. And they were telling me that in the Ukraine, the median evacuation time is 14 hours. So people with non-compressible bleeding, chest and abdomen, will very often die before they can get to help. So it'd be a thought there that you could have a frontline unit, underground perhaps, with a combat medic, not a doctor, who actually is being helped by a doctor a few kilometers away, driving a robot. And the defense agency in America, DARPA, ARIA in England, the armies around are all interested in this. And interesting enough, I've sold robots now to about 5 armies. So we're not there yet, but of course, you start to, I do this pretty much. If someone tells me a good idea, I never say, well, that sounds like nonsense. I always say, let me look at it, let me think. And that's where I am now with robots. I'm starting to think things that 5 years ago I would have thought impossible.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I think this is true for pretty much every field. We've seen such fast advancements in AI. When you were talking, reminded me, I actually visited a company in Cambridge recently that is looking at using AI for surgery, but to improve the image quality, because when you cut, there's smoke generated, and the AI can actually delete or take the smoke away and give you a very clear picture, which is, again, fascinating stuff.
you described the getting rid of the smoke and so on. We've already shown in our system how we can improve the color and the image
Mm.
massively. We also have a system to inject a dye that can help distinguish whether blood flow is adequate, certain anatomies, spread of tumors. And then I've been reviewing a system with another company where they take your MRI and then they convert it into a 3D image, which you have on the computer, and then you can take things away. And so before you go in to operate, you can have a perfect idea
Mm.
of what the cancer is and where it is. And then the next stage of that will be to superimpose that on the patient's body. So you will have real-time assistance for getting rid of it. And there's a really horrible condition in gynecology called endometriosis. The lining of the womb grows into areas outside the womb, causes a lot of pain, discomfort for patients, and it's difficult to treat surgically. And I've seen this AI program, early stages, but the surgeons that are trialing it say it makes a massive difference. So vision to me is the next really big area in, and we'll have different dyes we can inject that highlight different anatomies and so on. So yes, that's vision is robots is the one big one, but visions is without doubt the next big area. And then there's so many other potential advantages coming along. We changed the way we do the camera, and so we'll put the chip on tip so the camera it just get better vision from it. So it's a really exciting space.
Yeah. Yeah, super exciting. And y- y- I would love to talk about the fact that you've actually scaled your business and created this balance between innovation and business reality. So you've become a global company with installations in healthcare systems around the globe. Many companies struggle with bridging this gap between cutting edge research and innovation and real world adoption and the business realities that come with it. Any lessons that you can share?
More lessons than I would wish to remember, Bernard. I mean, have we made mistakes? Absolutely. If I was going to start again, the one thing I would do personally is get a business coach. I came with a very strong academic medical background, very strong surgical background, and I've always had very good ideas and inventions and stuff, but I didn't know business well. And as doctors, we sometimes a bit reluctant to challenge things, and I think a business coach would have been very useful to me. As a company, we had some ups and downs. One of our CEOs was not from a MedTech background. He was from a robotic background. And when he left us, a blogger in America who writes a lot on MedTech said, "You will never understand why we had a non-MedTech CEO." He said, "That's like taking a knife to a gunfight." And I think that's what we have done. So in our leadership team, we've now appointed quite a lot of new people who all have very strong MedTech backgrounds. Our new CEO has been in MedTech his entire career, and it just brings a vibrancy and it brings an understanding. And MedTech you don't pick up. You can't just pick it up like maybe other things, and it is unique compared with many other areas. To put that in perspective, I mean, the company that leads the field, Intuitive, is an incredibly professional company with a good product, and they are very competitive opponents. Ours is different, and we think we have advantages, but they are clinical advantages and so on. We probably came to market a bit too quickly, and
Mm.
we didn't have as refined a product as we needed. And we were up against a very fine product, so that did us some harm. Our
Mm.
original plan was always to put about 6 or 10 systems in and then stop and consolidate as we did the studies and the research that is needed to go around it. But what we've now done is changed a large number of our leadership team. We've redesigned all the instruments, and ours is a software-driven robot. So every 6 months we change it.
Mm.
So it looks identical to the robot from 2019, but that's where it ends, because everything inside it is different. We change the way the alarms work, how it functions, and all the time we're doing that with the doctors, with the surgeons. So we always in the field with them, asking them what works well, what could be better, and then we change it accordingly. And so one of the things we're really proud of is we are truly a digital robot.
Mm.
So we were in 2014 from an idea to 2019 in humans, 5 years. That's pretty fast. But now we've concentrated in bringing in some proper business people who are structuring the company for the global scale up. And the product we have now is really very good. It's unrecognizable from the one in 2019. And so, yes, it is exciting. We in Europe, East and West, we're in Africa, in North and South, and we're in LATAM, and we're just getting ready to go into America. So we have FDA approval, and we're about to go. It's an interesting and a difficult area to put in perspective. Johnson & Johnson, the MedTech giant, started their robot in 2012. We believe they spent somewhere in the region of 8 billion, and the robot isn't finished its clinical trials yet, so it's not been used yet. And Medtronic also have a robot, and they spent about 3 billion getting it going. So I feel very proud that what we've done is get to market quickly. I wish we'd been a little bit more reserved, Bernard, when we got to market and not try to scale too quickly. But I believe now when people are using our robot, they like what they're getting. They're excited by it, and we get some amazing feedback. One of my surgeons in France told me that he said his hospital had a fallout with whoever the other company was, and they got our robot. And he said he was very angry when he was forced to use our robot. He said, but now I love it. And he's one of the prolific robot users. He uses ours. He teaches a lot on it, and he loves the size. It's small, it's compact, and it allows him to do everything he wants to do laparoscopically. So we're getting some incredible feedback. As I said, the pediatric surgery, the surgeon in one of the teaching hospitals said, how long is it going to take till you get a license for the pediatric surgery? I said, why? He said, I no longer ethically believe I can go back to doing laparoscopic surgery. So there's lots of excitement. And I think that also, Bernard, is one of my philosophies. I want to be an evidence-based and a value-based robot. We have a problem in medicine in the world. It's too expensive. And even America are struggling. They're spending a lot of GDP in health against a declining life expectancy. So our responsibility is to build a robot that's affordable, that can do everything. But we must have the evidence. So if I found something was done better by hand or open, then we must go with that route. But we are finding, the reason I wanted to push it, we know that keyhole surgery, it halves the complications of open surgery. We know it allows people quicker back to work. We know it has less pain, but it's too difficult for many people to do. So the aim of the robot is we get more people doing keyhole surgery, but we've got to stick to the evidence and at no point just think we can do anything. And so we have a very, very good research program running all the time, constantly looking for evidence that what we're doing is indeed better than other forms of surgery.
Okay, so a big question now about the future. How do you see hospitals of the future? What might surgery look like in 10, 20 years' time?
We've got to do something quite radical to change hospitals of the future, because, worldwide, there's a shortage of surgeons. So one has to start to think of constructing a more efficient system. And there's many ways of doing that. So one of the things that everybody's a bit excited about is telesurgery. So I'm here in Cambridge and operating on somebody in Paris. The trouble about that is that doesn't solve the problems of a lack of surgeons.
Hmm.
What we need to do is find ways to train more surgeons. So maybe one of the things is you'd work in a team, and not everybody in the team is a surgeon. They are trained to do certain tasks, like putting the trocars in and getting it set up, and then when the main part of surgery is finished, taking them out. That's where we certainly will look at AI as a way of, can we possibly have aids, and so somebody with less qualification can get the similar sort of job, sort of result. So that's something we really, really have to look at. And that's where, again, autonomous surgery, that's where AI-aided decision-making may well make a big difference, because we believe as a company, we have robots in some low and middle income countries. One of our busiest robots in the world is in Pakistan. And we believe in actually giving back to medicine. And that should be the aim of the companies, to find ways. Lack of decent and good surgery in low and middle income countries is as damaging as not having anti-malaria tablets or bed nets or HIV medicines. So poor surgery impedes economic growth in low and middle income countries. So part of my aim when we started was not just to get them into the high income countries, but actually to get more being done. And that's where I think the shorter training, the AI aided, is going to help us democratize surgery in a much greater way.
You're within the robotics industry, so maybe we can look beyond the operating room, and where do you see robots and automation change healthcare beyond surgery and the healthcare delivery as a whole?
So just starting on the robot first, obviously there's an evolution of the robot. So at the moment, you in a theater and you sit at a console and the patient is there. I see us going to a situation where you don't need a console. Maybe you just use a VR headset. And we've already made some steps here. So our training is on a simulator, but you can only use the simulator attached to the console. But of course, you can only use the simulator when the robot is not working. So that's evenings and weekends. And the female trainee said they didn't like that because they were in a lonely theater on their own. So we put it in a VR. So you can take it home, you have a cup of coffee, and you can practice in the comfort of your home, and it fits in a backpack. So I know Luke, my co-founder, is already thinking about, could he have a robot where you don't have a console? And so it's just in a cupboard. You take it out the cupboard and you operate the arms remotely. So that's an area. AI will totally revolutionize health. Decision-making, I mean, already we're seeing programs where it's making a more accurate diagnosis than the doctor is. So we won't operate without that anymore. So you'll put in the symptoms and it will come back and say, I think you should think about A, B, C, D. We'll follow our data. The data excites me incredibly. If I get to 1 million patients and I have all the telemetry data and I have the videos and I have the clinical outcomes, wow, all of a sudden, don't do that because that will happen. And so I just see it is a revolutionary phase in medicine. I mean, we already have a program where I can go onto my database and I type in English, how many of the doctors are using A? And then you see the code get written. And then in English, it says 24%.
Mm.
And it's a speed of progression. So I see medicine changing a lot. And as I said to you earlier in the conversation, autonomous surgery, maybe not in every operation, but certainly in quite a few. You think about the brain, it's a much more stable organ. Therefore, with image overlay and then perhaps the machine doing it, I really wouldn't say no to that anymore. It is very exciting. So I see medicine being democratized. I see people in low and middle income countries getting provision of better healthcare. And the WHO has said we need better surgery in low and middle income countries. So we need to be working. I would always said I would like to make profit in the company by volume, not by margin. So more people get robots, And that's how you make your money, because I think it'll make all the difference in the world.
I completely agree. I couldn't agree more with anything that you've just said. I love the fact that, or this idea of making profit by volume and not by margin, which is, I think, so vital in the healthcare space.
And the other thing, Bernard, is I have one slide in my deck. I say just building a robot is not enough. So, round it, we have a technology research program running, which is all the time looking to improve things, make it stronger, make it more reliable, give it different functions. We've just added a special type of scissor to it called a harmonic scalpel, which deals with bleeding much better and more efficiently. And then our education program has won awards now because it's so much quicker and it really takes the surgeon up to a very high standard. And then we have the data, so we're all the time looking, is there any danger area? When we introduced the robot, Bernard, I knew every single complication that happened. And if it happened, we would then have an external committee say, is that expected in that type of operation? Is it a fault to the robot or not? Independent of us. And so far, we've not seen any major complications as a consequence of the robot. And all that data going rounded together, that's where medicine is in the future. At the moment, we're pretty inefficient. There are papers coming out now from America with 1 million patients in them, coming out of databases. And as I said, I have this registry, which we're investing quite a lot of money in. And so as we go forward, at the moment, if you want to do a clinical trial, I have to get a contract research organization. They will do the trial for me. Cost me for 120 patients about $1.5 million. But going forward, you'll have registries. Then you get real world data, and there are ways of converting it to real world evidence. So there were 2 papers, one on cholecystectomy with 1 million patients in, another one on sleeve gastrectomy with 660,000 patients. All of a sudden, and then you can't easily cheat that data. So then all of a sudden you're getting different and new insights. So at every level, we've changing things. The other big change is in the past with surgery, they used to train you on cadavers or on porcine. We've got rid of both. So we train on the simulator, and then we use plastic mannequins. And we've already demonstrated that the people trained on a plastic mannequin get to work the robot more efficiently than people trained on a cadaver, because you can do a thing called sustained deliberate practice. So you say to a person, no, you did that incorrectly, do it again. If you've got any spare money, invest in a simulation or a mannequin company. Our simulator is relatively basic, but I had a meeting with a company that do simulation for Formula One. And they tell me that the drivers, 80% of their training is on a simulator. So go for it. And then the mannequins, they now have mannequins that bleed, plastic ones. So I see in the not too distant future, the ability to train a surgeon from nowhere to skill without touching a human. And then the last bit would just be getting used to the tissue types and the bleeding and so on. Whereas in traditional surgery, you trained on a live human, which must stop. So in every phase, it's just putting in different new things that will drive standards up and up.
Yeah, amazing. And this is super exciting. Everything you just talked about will only make healthcare better.
It will. And we have to, in the world. We also got to drive the cost of healthcare down, Bernard. America probably spends officially 16.5%, unofficially probably 20% of GDP on health against a declining life expectancy at birth.
Yeah, so you've talked about a few concerns. When you look at the future of healthcare, what are the things that you're most worried about or most excited about?
So the things I'm most worried about is cost. The percentage of spend in GDP in the high income countries is just going up all the time. So we have to look at that, and we have to be responsible and work out a way of maintaining that. And the trouble is some of the margins are very excessive. Okay, so that's a global problem. The other problem that we've got is that research has become too expensive. It's monopolized by these big contract research organizations who want to make the trials as complicated as possible. because that's how they make the return on investment. Where I won't mention either by name, but one of the contract research organizations has a bigger market cap than one of the MedTech companies that builds the equipment. That just can't be right. So we're looking at new ways of doing research. And one of the things we look at is a thing called the IDEAL framework. And IDEAL stands for idea, development, assessment, an long-term outcome. And it's a ethical, scientific way of evaluating new technologies much more affordably. So you start off by doing cadavers and porcine, and then you move to do a single study, wait, see it, and then you start these cohort studies. But you use internal staffing and you use your own registry, so your data is all collected much more affordably, and that is a way, that is something that's really starting to appeal, and it's getting traction all the time in the international. So those are things that we have to do. One thing what excites me is I almost don't know what will come next. It's just so incredible. What the technology. I of course go to a lot of technology meetings, and I get glimpses of things. Robotics. I mean, my goodness, it's if you go to a robotic conference now, compared to 10 years ago, there's a company in England that have built a robotic arm, and as a hand with fingers, and it's incredible, and robots that walk and talk to you, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And the development is so fast and it seems to be accelerating.
Yes, and therein also lies a danger. So we've got to make sure that we don't give away good science. We mustn't, because the worst thing we can do in a cash-strapped world is enable things to come to market that aren't proven. We do need the research. We do need to know that it is proven. We've seen too many scandals over the years of technologies that really didn't have the science behind them and harmed patients in quite large numbers. You may have seen there was a big scandal around implant of plastic meshes into women, vaginal implants. And I'm one of the world authorities in implantable plastics. And we knew this was going to be a problem. We warned the companies, but they still went ahead and marketed them. And in fact, in England, there was, as a consequence of it, they've banned in some instances now. And there's really disappointing reports on sort of bad behavior. And we don't want that to happen to people. And that's why we've been so strict and spent a lot of money on the research we do on the robots and the registry, which is ensuring safety at all stages. If something happened and we suddenly saw a spike, there's a very famous case in America of a drug called Vioxx, which was an anti-inflammatory. And I think it was at its peak making about 25 billion a year for the company. And then Kaiser Permanente, which is a managed healthcare unit in California, saw a spike of heart attacks. And at its peak, that drug was killing about 600 people a week in the United States. And there'd been some naughtiness in the research and the way they interpreted it. But because there was a registry, they were able to identify it and stop it sooner than if they hadn't had that registry, it would have carried on killing people. And so one of my excitements for the future is with quantum computing and so on, I want to see more registries so that we have a constant look at is something as good as they say it is, or could it be better, or how can we improve it? So to me, regulation has to be streamlined and made more efficient. And we also don't want to create a regulatory environment that prevents innovation. And that has been a bit of a danger in Europe in recent years.
As an entrepreneur, you've been on an amazing journey. What are the biggest lessons that you have learned along your journey and that you would like to pass on to others?
Consult. If you have an area that you're not an expert in, get them in. The other thing is these entrepreneurial, the journey we've been on. One is developing something new. Okay, and that's exciting. But at the same time, you have to have reliability. And you have to concentrate on reliability. So entrepreneurs tend to like the next new thing, the next more exciting thing. But actually, in this journey, this is a human that you're operating on. The doctors see what's in front of them. So reliable instruments, strong instruments, reliable system that doesn't break down ever. And that is got to be as big a part of your journey as the doing fancy new things. And that is probably my biggest take-home. The other take-home message is watch your purse very carefully. When we raised large amounts of money, it does make people a little bit rash. They think they've all got that much money. And at every phase, you should be looking at the money. You should have very strong financial people in the company who actually put the brakes on, who actually warn you about excessive spending, who can keep you focused on, because you have a runway, and if you run out of it, companies go down. So yes, to me, it's a stronger structure, quicker, and that's you bring the right people in, like we've done now. We have, real industry MedTech professionals in a whole different pile of roles. We've brought in new technology officers, who is a person with a lifetime of technology skills. And the first thing he did was say, we need to make that more reliable. We need to make that stronger. It's not the sexy stuff of doing a fancy new instrument. It's absolutely essential so that you become a mature, stable company and that people want to work with.
Yeah, amazing. Very, very solid advice there, I think, for anyone starting a business or running a startup or running any business of any kind, really. If I gave you a blank check now and said you can create a moonshot innovation in surgery, what would you create?
I would like to take a team. I would build a team on the side out of the main company, and I'd get them to work on remote control of the robot, to do these things like I was talking about, the telesurgery and so on. Because if you were operating in California and I was here and you were doing an operation that I do very well, it would be lovely if I could put my headset on and watch you, and then at a point say, Bernard, I would like to take over here for 10 minutes, and then I could control it. And that to me is where the real telesurgery. The second place is in the military context. But I would like a team working separately from us on that moonshot as to that. And then the other thing, I would like a team working on vision all the time, separately, and really saying, what could we do? With these fancy dyes, what can we do with image overlay, and cooperate with companies who have expertise in that area. Because what I'm sort of saying is, one of my heroes in life is Demis Hassabis. And, you have people like that. You never know what they're going to come up with next. In
And
fact,
he was at the meeting that we
he
we met.
was. I would love to get him to come look at my robot, because any man who can, when he started doing protein chemistry, there were 200 million proteins in the world, of which only 180,000 had their 3D structure. By the time he'd finished 2 years later, he'd done all 200 million. I mean, so that's what I look at things and think, we mustn't ourselves constrain the possibility of the future. It's working with people like that. So I will be doing some work with DARPA, work with ARIA. A lot of the companies are reaching out to us to say, can we cooperate? And I think one has to have a very open mind and bring in the things, because the possibilities are boundless.
I agree. If you could go back and give your younger self, the athlete, the young doctor, one piece of advice, what would that be?
A little bit slower and a little bit more careful. I was once going on about an idea I had, and a very senior man asked me to come visit him, senior doctor, and he said, you're very bright, you have great ideas, but just get the evidence before you talk about them. So I have to be a little bit more modest and a little bit slower and a little bit more careful. I would have worked more in teams earlier as well. My strength now, and which I picked up in my later career, is you build a team around you. So
Mm.
you put people in place that you're not good at. You know, Luke and I are both guys with 100 ideas in our head. Um, but what you need around you is other people who are stable and sensible and keep your feet on the ground. So I think it's keeping your feet on the ground. But it's been a fantastic career. I mean, it's I've done so many different things that I have an interest in, and I think the other advice I'd give is just always enjoy what you're doing. I have fortunately always enjoyed what I do, so it's been great.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Mark, for your time today. I truly enjoyed our conversation. And if anyone ever wants to rewatch this or re-listen to this, you can simply go to my YouTube channel or any podcast platform where you can find this conversation and hundreds of others like it on the future of business and tech. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Bernard. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.